Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of Texas Narcos Podcast. Today I'm very excited to welcome Tyler Kroenke to the show. Tyler, how you doing?
Good, yourself?
Good, man. I'm doing well. We are coming to you all again from Nashville with the with another installation of our ACE instructor series, if you will. So I appreciate you coming on. I know it's been a long day.
Yeah, appreciate you having me though.
Yeah, man. So before we get started, everybody on the Texas Narcos Podcast gets a gift, a T-shirt. So
yeah.
We got you one right there.
Yeah, this is awesome. I mean, I saw this logo at the conference today when you were setting up your stand. That looks great. So I'll wear it in Nebraska. Hopefully I don't get too much slack by having Texas stuff on there. But
Yeah, you'll be all right.
yeah, no, this is great. I appreciate it.
Cool, man. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you from, where you work, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I haven't moved far from home. I grew up in northeast Nebraska on a farm, northwest of Omaha, about an hour. Real small town. About when I was about 20 years old, I'd never really wanted to be in law enforcement. It's not that I didn't want to. It's just never really was a thought. No family members were ever in law enforcement, and kind of figuring out what I wanted to do was going to college. And my wife had two college roommates, and both of their dads were state troopers, both sergeants for the state patrol. And kind of got to know them, and I was just like, man, I really look up to those guys, and I think this fits. And went to the academy, and our academy is very paramilitary style. And I got through about the first 4 days, and I was just like, what did I get in myself? Like, I'm a college boob that it's like, this is not what I thought it was going to be, but stuck it out, and it was the best decision I ever made. Because, I mean, when I got to the road, I have a great agency I worked for with the Nebraska State Patrol. I had great training officers, and, like, I know that, like, I'm so lucky thinking back about the training that I got from those guys that it just set me up for success. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for them. Going all the way back to there. So, all of us started out on the road. So I started out there in a small town, northeast Nebraska, about 2,500 people. And I was the trooper, and it was kind of different, like I'm 21 years old, 22 years old, getting out of the academy, and people are looking to you and you're like, I don't know which way is what. And you're asking this trooper that's 22 years old, but great people in that town.
And y'all actually handled calls there. I mean, y'all went to domestics and thefts and burglaries and whatnot. I mean, it wasn't just like traffic enforcement. Yeah.
So like you could always jump out with the sheriff's office and stuff and be able to go out with them and be able, and go out there. And they always kind of would laugh that, the trooper would show up to a domestic call because it's like, what are you doing here? You should be out writing tickets. But I love that part of it. I love being out there, and like, you get bored just writing tickets or another DUI arrest, whatever it is, working the highway. You can go out and help the sheriff's office. And I think you learn so much more too as a cop than just being a guy that's on the interstate just out of the car. So definitely.
So how did you transition from being a uniform, like a road troop, to working investigations? Not necessarily the type of investigations that you're doing now, but like getting into the narcotic side of things.
Yeah, so I was on the road for 7 years, and I was kind of just starting to get the itch that maybe I should go into investigative services, and a spot opened up in Omaha, and it was pharmaceutical diversion is what it's called. In Nebraska, we only have one investigator out of everybody that does pharmaceutical diversion. At first I saw it, and I was like, what's that? Some court diversion program? Like, I don't know anything about it. So started talking to somebody, and they kind of explained that now, like, hey, there's pharmaceuticals. There's a legal way to obtain that controlled substance. And this is anything outside of that. Several different points where it could become illegal. You're going to investigate that. Interviewed for it, got into that. And I always say Nebraska's kind of behind the times. Nebraska, we were still dealing with doctor shoppers and fake scripts and everything else, while everyone else kind of was starting to see the fentanyl. And we didn't see that. So, I did that for a few years and was a TFO, and learned a lot. I mean, we worked overdoses, we worked doctors, we worked, these crews that would travel around with fake scripts and use homeless people that they dropped off at pharmacies, and kind of learned how to do that complex investigation. And that was really kind of fit towards me. I like those long-term investigations and just be able to take the whole thing down. And then, after that, like, I kind of took an unconventional route. I decided that, it's time I'm going to promote to sergeant. I was an investigator for a few years, and I put in for a traffic spot, went back to the road, was only there for 4 months. And a lieutenant spot opened up, and it was the lieutenant of investigative services in the Northeast division of our Northeast part of the state.
Yeah.
So I took that over and oversaw the criminal and drug division up there as a lieutenant. Did it for 2 years, had a great crew, learned so much from them.
Yeah.
We accomplished some really good stuff. And then, again, learned so much from those guys and girls, just to, like how to process cases and how to handle things. And, but really, I was really young, and I sat there behind a desk, and then, I went to a retirement party for one of our drug investigators, and he's talking about, all the fun that he's had over the years and telling stories. And I'm going, I'm going to be a paper pusher for the next 25 years. I can't do this. So a spot opened up, kind of doing what I was doing before, and this pharmaceutical diversion. And then I knew there was kind of this fentanyl task force that was kind of starting to, get some traction, and probably was going to happen. We were really seeing fentanyl now in Nebraska. So I'm the first person ever in my agency to interview to demote 2 spots.
Nice.
Like I interviewed to do it, and obviously got the spot. And now I've been on the fentanyl task force, responding to overdose deaths for the last 3 years, and it's been a great. The team I work with every day is just awesome. I mean, bunch of go-getters. Everyone's got their skills, and everyone's just all hands.
Yeah.
Get the job done. I mean, I say every one of our investigations that we do, it's just such a team effort. Like, it's not my case, it's not your case. It's like, hey, you're going to do this, I'm going to do that, and you just jump in and you help wherever you can. So
everybody takes a bite.
Team. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's how it should be, you know? So before we jump into more specifics, so how did you end up getting putting together the training class that you're doing now and getting hooked up with ACE?
Yeah, so years ago when I was still doing the pharmaceutical diversion, we always talked about, like, a lot of guys that would respond to these pharmacies or different things, they kind of didn't know what to look for, or not they didn't know what statutes to charge. They didn't know, like, what crimes they were really investigating. If there was a fake script passed and they got the pills, they would charge the guy with theft. And it wasn't, the officer's fault. He just didn't know.
Right.
So we were investigating these crimes, and we kind of put together a really good program with State Patrol. And I was like, we just put a training class together and kind of go around and teach it. And I got a lot of instructor requests from, like, different med schools and pharmacy schools. And I really started to get a nice program and class put together where we were going around just teaching it in-house throughout the state. Yeah. And I fell in love with it. I mean, when you're kind of passionate about that, it really starts to take a hold of you, and you just love being able to spread the knowledge that you have. And I know as well, like, if I can't do it all myself, so like, I've got to train other people in order to be able to do this. So once the fentanyl started, and we started doing these overdoses, the class just kind of evolved into that. And then Nick Bonnie, which you just had on our podcast, he went to a conference and met up with Bauer, and they hit it off, and he kind of joined the ACE team there. Nick's been telling me for years, like, hey, you need to, like, I've seen you instruct, you do a great job. Your class needs to be out there. Nobody else teaches anything like that. And I'm like, whatever. Like, if it happens, it happens. And I started to kind of look around at different companies that, the training companies, and Nick brought it up to Bauer, and Bauer gave me a call, and he's like, we'd love to have you. Like,
that's awesome.
I just met Bauer yesterday for the first time in person.
Wow.
I've talked to him on the phone 100 times. Yeah. He's probably getting annoyed with me, just like, hey, what about this? What about this? Yeah. So I'm super excited. 2025 is almost booked up. I mean, it's joining a team like ACE, perfect fit.
That's
awesome. Guys want to work, passionate, just ready to go. So
that's awesome. So what kind of stuff would people be, I guess let me say, what types of things in your class, if somebody's going to attend your class, are they going to be learning? Yeah, so we do cover a small portion at the beginning on the pharmaceutical diversion part, just because I think guys really don't understand it. And the pharmaceutical diversion and that part,
really got us in this country to where we are today.
Yeah.
As far as the addiction to pills and everything else and why we've turned to fentanyl. And it's still out there. We still see nurses and doctors that are abusing because of their ability to gain it, or their access to this stuff. So we do cover trends and how they do it, diversion. Pharmacy burglaries are big now, the promethazine with codeine and that type of thing. And then we really shift into the meat and potatoes of the class is going to be overdose response, and then that investigation that follows. Really start off at the basic level of just the scene itself. A lot of times, like a detective or an investigator can't go to every single scene, or certain agencies that respond to these might not have an investigator or a detective that can do it.
Yeah.
So one is just going there, recognizing the different evidence or signs of what an overdose could be, and maybe just going, okay, this looks like it possibly could be an overdose, asking for an autopsy, asking your coroner, your county attorney to order an autopsy to be able to prove that it is, an overdose, knowing what charges you can. 25 states right now have a state statute that you can charge distribution causing death or serious bodily injury, and they kind of vary in their wording. But the feds, it's a 20-year mandatory minimum.
Yeah.
So that's a huge hit that people really, take serious, and dealers really start to talk. So, and then, I can't recreate that scene if I'm not there. So we really go through like what a uniform could do on scene if an investigator's not there. Preservation of that phone, what they can do with phones, interviewing witnesses that are there on scene, talking to those witnesses. Maybe there's passcodes. One thing I really hit on is the next of kin notification. No cop likes doing that.
Yeah.
It's one of the worst parts of our job, and we're usually like, get in, rip the Band-Aid off, and get out of there.
Yeah.
But that next of kin for us is huge. And a lot of times I can't tell you, like, the relationship I build with the family of the victim, pays dividends down the road, because they'll know passcodes. They know who they hang out with. They know so many things about that victim, the deceased, that, you wouldn't get otherwise.
Yeah.
And some of our cases have been broke open by the deceased family. So, that's a huge piece of it. And then we'll just go into the follow-up, different things that we can do. If it's iCloud dumps, Google dumps, different historical cell tower dumps. I mean, we're going to throw a bunch at you, and I can't get into depth on every single piece of that, but just knowing that's possibly out there, and to know, hey, reach out. I know this, I know Tyler talked about in his class, like, I know you can do an iCloud. I'll walk you through it. When you take my class, you're going to get my phone number at the end, and call me. I'll send you a go by. I'll walk you through it. I'm there to help. It's not just you get me for 8 hours and that's it. That's not the way I operate. So
that's awesome, man. That's in today's day and age, that's definitely an important skill for the cops out there to know how to do all that stuff. I mean, you were talking about, in the beginning, this was all diversion related, I remember the first time that I saw a counterfeit M30 was probably 2018. We were doing a buy, and we were trying to buy, we were working with a TDS group.
Yep.
And so we were trying to buy actual, OxyContin or oxycodone or whatever it's called, and we were paying $1 a milligram. So it was $30 for an M30. And when we got them, we got to looking at them, and they just didn't look right. They were crumbly, and they just didn't, they didn't look like they were supposed to. And this was, people had heard about the pills, but it wasn't like a mainstream thing. It wasn't like, it wasn't something that you would see every day. We didn't carry Narcan. We didn't have fentanyl testing kits. We didn't have any of that stuff. And so we said, well, maybe this is some of that new stuff that we're hearing about. So we sent it off to the lab, and, came back as fentanyl. But I don't remember who I was talking to, but I told some people back then, I said, this is going to be a big problem, and it's going to be a different kind of problem than your traditional drug problem is. And I said, when heroin addicts and crack addicts and meth addicts overdose and die on the street corners, the general public could care less, right? They're like, oh, well, they chose that, they chose that route. They chose that path in life. And I said, this is going to be a different type of epidemic, and people aren't going to start paying attention until the principal's kid, the pastor's kid, the people who are important in the community, when their kids start passing away and dying from this stuff, that's when people are going to start paying attention to it. And it happened. And I said this back, that was 6 or 7 years ago, and it actually happened, and the sad thing is people from all walks of life can get down this road where, you get an injury. Let's say you hurt your knee or you hurt your back, and they start you on, hydrocodone.
Yeah.
And you take those for 2-3 months, and then that's not working anymore. So then they bump it up to Oxy, and then you're on that for a little while. And the next thing you know, that's not going to work anymore. And the doctor cuts you off. And now you're like, oh, well, I'm addicted to this now. And so then you've got like a mom who's dropping her kids off at the school and going down the street corner and getting heroin. And then now you got the fentanyl thing. It's a vicious cycle. And hopefully we can.
It's so common, though. I mean, you talk about that, but every one of us that's been there, you've sat across the table from the person, and it's almost like a relief that comes off their shoulders when you just they try to deny it at first if they're diverting or if they're using fentanyl. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're just like, hey, look, you got a problem. I know you're a nurse or you're this upstanding person in the community, but you need help.
Yeah.
And they just kind of like, yeah, you're right. Yeah. I do. And that's the first time they've come to reality is when I'm sitting across the table and they're facing a felony. Somebody is going to make them go get help now. And it may be a court program.
Yeah.
But at least somebody's just forcing that hand. And they kind of just, and the other thing is like we sit with so many victims' families and sit across the table and they want to show them, hey, here's my daughter. She was singing the national anthem. What you saw is not my daughter. And I'm like, I get it. I mean, it's always the same story. She got injured doing cheerleading and they prescribed her this and which is why the importance of covering the pharmaceutical diversion in the first part of it. Yeah. That stuff's not sexy. It's not like what you saw today with Bauer, just, him talking about all the interdiction loads. Like I'm talking about promethazine. I'm talking about oxycodone. And one of the first cases I worked in TDS was a group that they were writing fake scripts for oxycodone 30s. Yeah. And they were legit oxys that they were selling, $30 a pill and go and fill them at the pharmacy. I can't remember the last time I saw a legitimate oxy 30 on the street. Like, if it is, if they stole it from grandma that's on hospice or something, it's not.
Yeah, that stuff's not prescribed anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody walked in with that crew was filling scripts for 120 pills, at Oxy 30s and got them filled all over the Midwest.
Yeah.
Coming from Chicago, and they'd pick up homeless individuals and then just give them a couple bucks to go and fill the script.
Yeah.
And then if they got caught, who cares? They're smart, so now I think a pharmacist wouldn't even. They'd call that in a heartbeat. Like nobody prescribes that anymore. So it's crazy.
I remember back in the day whenever they would change the coating on the outside of them so that you couldn't put them in a spoon and burn them up. And because heroin addicts were
doing
putting water. Yeah. But that seems like you only hear about that anymore.
No, because it's so much easier to get fentanyl and it's so readily available.
Yeah,
and it's a better high. I mean, they like that. So,
how much do you see the people, not just popping them, but smoking them?
A lot. So we'll find aluminum foil. One of the last ones I went to, the scenes. I mean, it was everywhere. I mean, just the aluminum foil with the, that black trail just to where they're chasing the dragon. Just like the old days. But they heat it up underneath, and they're just falling it with that straw, bringing in all those vapors. And we do see a lot of that. And I don't know if it's hit or miss of what we see more on actual scenes, if they're shooting up or they're smoking. It just seems like smoking lately, but it goes in swings. And, we'll have a bunch of them on pills, and then we'll switch back and they'll be towards powder, and they kind of go back and forth. And there really is, at least in Omaha, pretty distinct groups of they're pill users or they're powder users. And they're kind of their separate little groups. I don't know if that's like that everywhere, but that's at least what we see.
Yeah.
We don't see them too much back and forth. I'm doing powder now, I'm doing pills. And so,
we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but how has fentanyl impacted the landscape of the drug use and trafficking in America compared to other drugs?
Well, I think, we kind of hit on what you said, but just how small it is too. I mean, that's a pill, so tiny and it can pack so much. Or we're talking powder where, they might use 2 grams for the whole week, and that's a heavy user.
Yeah.
So if you're bringing in an ounce, you're bringing in a ton of weight. But think of where you can hide, an ounce in a car, the different compartments, the voids, everywhere. So like it's so much harder to interdict on the roadside, and you don't have to bring in the mass quantities like you do if you're bringing in, meth or whatever it may be. So I think that's one of the biggest things is just the ability to hide that and not detect it. Dogs aren't trained on, not all dogs are trained to sniff for fentanyl. Like, I mean, the dangers is that involves. So I just don't think it gets interdicted like everything else does. So it's just harder and harder to fight.
Yeah.
So, and it's so addictive. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, people can get off other drugs. I mean, it's hard, but they will.
Yeah.
Fentanyl, I mean, you're hooked, man, it takes a hold of you, and they will do anything, which then it brings in, us guys that work in the drug division, like working informants that are fentanyl addicts. Like,
it's going to be tough.
It's playing with dynamite because you can't predict what they're going to do.
Yeah.
You're at any time they could overdose. Like, I mean, because they can't get off the stuff. And then now, if you're looking out for their best interest, you're putting them right back in a place where they're seeing it and they're sweating because they want to use it so bad.
Yeah.
It's just so hard for us to be able to fight that battle. It's a drug like we really haven't seen. So
yeah, I mean, I know back in the day, whenever a person was coming off heroin, they would get dope sick, and it was a physical sickness coming off of heroin. And I haven't personally experienced dealing with anybody that's getting dope sick off fentanyl, but I can only imagine it's exponentially worse.
All these people that we throw in jail, they are so scared. Yeah. I mean, that's more what I could tell them, like, hey, I just arrested you on distribution causing death. You're facing 20 to life. They can't think about not getting high for the next 12 hours. Yeah. That's really all they're like, I'm going to be so sick. Yeah. Like it is so bad coming off of that is all they can even focus on. And it leads to a lot of cooperation because they're all like, I'll do anything. What do you want to know? I just can't go to jail today.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, you killed somebody. Yeah. You're going to jail.
Yeah.
But
that's, it's completely changed the landscape. Like I said, I mean, it's a big priority.
Yeah.
It's a big problem.
Yeah. 2,000 pills, I mean, is a lot of pills.
Yeah.
But you could fit that in somebody's purse, I mean, and then.
Or a kilo of powder.
Yeah. And that's tiny. And then by the time you get it somewhere and you cut it down, like that's so many uses. And it's just a small little thing. You could body carry that.
Yeah.
It's so hard to interdict.
I remember back in the day, we were chasing pill presses around, and, I would tell people, they would ask like, what's this fentanyl stuff they're talking about? I said, well, I'd explain it to them. And I say, they'll get the raw powder in, and then they'll put a gram of fentanyl in a blender with 1,000 grams or with, almost a kilo of cutting agent and some dye, and they'll turn the blender on, and then they'll pour the stuff into a press, and they'll press out the pills. I said, the problem is you're not dealing with a chemist in a lab, like a pharmaceutical lab. So you may get the pill that has a ton of fentanyl, or you may get the pill that has nothing.
And then you use and use, and then they're all, I hit the one with all of it.
Yeah. And, I think the current trend has started to go away from that. I mean, I can't tell you the last time I've seen a pill press. Everything's coming out of Mexico.
Everything.
They're already pressed.
We don't see hardly anybody pressing anything in Nebraska or anywhere that, I mean, it's all coming from Mexico.
Yeah. What's the common route of getting the pills into your city? Just got through talking to Nick. We talked about the parcels and the buses and that kind of stuff. Is that kind of what you're seeing, or?
We do. It's really a mixture of almost anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of depends on what group we're working. The powder dealers, those types of guys, it seems like they're a smaller circle that are coming from our bigger areas. Chicago is a main source in Omaha, and that's coming through cars, whatever it may be. It could be coming on the bus or the Greyhound, but usually we've seen it, like just regular transport going to Chicago, picking up, coming back. The pills, it really is hit and miss. We may have dealers that have cartel connections that are bringing it up, large amount of pills, or we may, see it coming through, parcel. If it's, whatever carrier that you can think of, they're going to use it. So, and we have seen that quite a bit. So.
Yeah. How much involvement have you seen with the pills in the school crowd? Like your middle schools, your high schools, your colleges, that kind of stuff.
Luckily, and I think different areas are being hit different, but in Nebraska, we haven't seen too much of that yet, just making it into the schools. It seems like it's that 22 to 40-year-old crowd as our main ones. And then, you'll have a few spotted around there that are a little bit older and stuff like that. But that's that main crowd that we see. It's not we haven't seen too much in our school system just yet.
Yeah, I know down in Texas, there's been a bunch of them in the high schools and stuff.
Yeah.
Which is,
just again, we go back to, trying, you always got the dogs that go around and clean up the lockers. Well, if the dog's not trained on it.
Yeah, I think the key to stopping that is the education part of it.
Correct.
Getting in there into the schools and letting the kids know, like, hey, if it doesn't come from your pharmacy, if your mom and dad doesn't give it to you, out of a pill bottle, don't put it in your mouth.
I've told my kids, and they're only 11, 8, and 3, and I've just been like, hey, I don't care if it's an ibuprofen. If it doesn't come from me, you don't take it. Or a school nurse, that's it. Like, you don't take it. And I think my 11-year-old knows more about fentanyl than I think most adults do, which, it's kind of scary, but it might get me in trouble at school once in a while. So, but she's super smart, and that's great.
Without getting into too much of the tactics that you use, how are you able to trace from starting at the scene of an overdose to connect that back to a person? Like, how does that process work? Like I said, without giving, the details, but it's kind of an overview.
For us, I'd say the phone is that most important piece. That phone is a smoking gun. And, a lot of times we'll get into that phone right there on the scene. We'll try.
Yeah.
And that's where the interview and the witnesses and stuff can really help, because, and then also just talking like, hey, who all has access to the phone? Is it just the person that's deceased? In that case, the federal side, they view it as, Fourth Amendment.
There's no expectation of privacy.
No, there's no expectation of privacy, because the Fourth Amendment covers individuals' rights. Well, that individual's deceased, no expectation of privacy. So we'll get in there and we'll start looking right away. And seeing if we can identify, hey, this looks like a dealer. Like, talking about blues, talking about whatever. And we've reversed those. Like, we've hit them up and been like, we're going to build a case on them either way. So it's kind of a shot in the dark. Like, hey, if they show up, great. What's better than the person showing up with dope in hand at the door? We'll close the doors up and be like, just waiting for them. And it's worked a few times. Not every time, but it's worked a few, and it's been great, because then, like, hey, you can't deny you were talking about fentanyl. We can see it, like, and then you showed up with it, So, but that's time sensitive, because if you wait on that, they're going to find out that, the person died, and they're not, they're not going to take a call from the dead person's phone. So,
exactly.
The phones are huge, and just, again, talking to other people. And we've seen some people where they're like, we can't get in the phone. We hit a dead end. If you start looking at tolls, you start looking at different things, identifying phone numbers, you got different avenues, iClouds, Gmail, that you can still get content, and actually some really good stuff that you're not dead in the water. You may talk to mom and dad, and they're like, hey, his phone doesn't have any service anyway. You only use Facebook Messenger. Okay, you got his Facebook? All right, now we'll roll that into a search warrant and start looking at that information, and maybe something comes from that. So, a lot of it too is following up on surveillance cameras and stuff like that. Because if we get it like, hey, let's meet up, blah, 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 like, and they meet up at the gas station down the street, we'll go there and we'll get the deal on camera. And then we'll go down the rabbit hole of, hey, on our search warrant, when we do arrest this guy, it looks like he's wearing a certain shirt. And I use that example in class. Like, you could see this distinct shirt that, was pretty identifiable, the surveillance video that not everybody wears. Then when we do the search warrant, there's the shirt, and that's our piece of evidence.
That's awesome.
Different things like that. And just follow up. Like, I mean, it's really not complex things.
Yeah.
I mean, I can get pretty complex with cell tower dumps, and I really like. I'm kind of geek out, but like connected cars, like every car 2015 newer usually has a SIM card in it. I like doing that stuff, and it's like another cell phone. But
I've done a couple of those.
Yeah, you don't have to. I mean, a lot of it's just knowing, hey, it's an option.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's out there. Talk to somebody that has, but and then we'll go to the next level. And that's, I think a lot of people get to that first level and they stop.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we'll just keep going. If we can, we just start. And that's a perfect scenario where it just rolls into the next one and the next one and the next one. And there's nothing like indicting that fourth level dealer and he's never even met the decedent.
Right.
But you're able to go, you gave it to you, you gave it to you, and you gave it to him, and he died.
And they're all getting indicted on the same thing?
20 years of life.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Now, we're super lucky in Nebraska, and it's all about building relationships, proving that you're going to put together a hell of a case. Our AUSA in Nebraska that we work with all the time, she's a bulldog and she's fantastic. Like,
that's awesome.
We wouldn't have been able to have the success that we have without her.
Yeah.
And then the group, like, I mean, I can't again talk about the people I work with enough. Like, we put these cases together and there's such a talented team. And just like, I play a tape. I actually just put it on the Facebook page a little bit ago too, a couple of days ago. A jail phone call where a defendant's talking to his mom, and they're like, hey, what'd the judge say? I'm facing 20 years of life for distribution of a controlled substance causing death. And she's like, well, are you denying that? Are you pleading innocent? And he goes, no. They showed me everything they have. And she goes, well, what do they have? And he goes, everything. Like, he was so defeated. He's like, they have everything, Bob.
Wow.
And it was just so damning for him too. And like, but you laid it all out in front of that person.
Yeah.
And they're just like, yeah, you got me.
Yeah.
And then to plead to 20 years, like, that's a good feeling to know your case is that strong.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a rocket science to figure these cases out. It just takes one on to work and do your job. So, how
important is the toxicology on this? I know I don't know if this is, if you've run into this or not, but where I'm from, we were having some issues where if they had other drugs in their system as well, then there has some issue.
There's case law that we'll cover too about talking about that. If not, but for the fentanyl, that he would still be alive.
Right.
So like the but for causation that the fentanyl is what caused the death.
Yeah.
And the toxicology is important. And then I think we're advancing now compared to when we first started these. It just, you got forensic toxologists that can kind of testify to like, hey, that meth level did not affect it. The fentanyl is what killed them, but then there's certain parts too. I'm not a chemist, and you'll see this and you have to reach out to the chemist, and DEA has a good one that will kind of explain it to you. I had one, it was kind of a low fentanyl number. I was like, maybe fentanyl didn't kill her. But then he's like, hey, Tyler, look at it. There's no metabolites of the fentanyl. He's like, so pretty much she took fentanyl and she died. Like, I mean, she smoked it and that was it.
Yeah.
So there was a small amount in there. That's because that's all she got. It was the one pill and can kill type of deal.
Wow.
And it didn't have time to metabolize in her body because she just died right there.
Yeah. And
he's like, I can testify to that. Like, and she was 32 years old. 32-year-olds just don't.
Yeah, they don't
die. So the toxicology is huge.
How quick are y'all getting those back now?
Well, with the federal partners that I work with, we can get the actual toxicology back pretty quick through their program. And just knowing your partners there can really help you out. But that's not the end all. Like, our pathologists, we have to have that autopsy report back. So we may get toxicology back quick, and it's nice because then we can kind of go, hey, this is a good one. It looked like fentanyl is what killed him. I'm not a doctor, but we should probably at least go down this road. Our pathologists were about 90 days out for an autopsy report from the day of autopsy. And that's really what you need for the case. And I'll say though too, like, we work these cases and not every one of them are getting distribution causing death. A lot of times though, we can prove distribution or at least I've got a pretty good idea, but I can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. But I know that they deal fentanyl, and it identifies a dealer and can kind of point us in the right direction to where I can now be proactive and maybe go after that dealer.
Yeah.
To take him to jail for just regular distribution, work a regular dope case on that person, to where if I put him in jail, I may be saving other lives that he couldn't get to or she couldn't get to. So,
what are some of the biggest challenges that you run into in holding these people accountable?
Toxicology is one big one, just because you got to have that perfect thing, and then also like you have to prove that the fentanyl that they got, from so and so was what killed them, and not, because a lot of times if you got a person just drug seeking behavior, they may hit up 10 different people, and then it's trying to figure out, hey, which one finally gave to them, you just never know, or if you've got a boyfriend girlfriend and they're using together. There's not those messages between each other, and if you're not on the scene and you can actually interview them and get some person that's got a little bit of guilt that night because boyfriend, girlfriend just died, and they may tell you everything because they feel guilty. If you wait a week to talk to them, they kind of start to build their story up and go, I might get away with this, so that's a big thing, just not having those messages and clear cut stuff. Hey, I bought it from him or I bought it from her. And, they don't prove who they got it. That's a big thing. So
that's awesome. I guess how can I word this? So, where do you see this battle in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years? And do you think that, that there's a path to us coming out on the other side of this?
It's a good question. I hope that, they keep advancing with naloxone and Narcan to be able to save these people's lives. Because, I think at the beginning, us cops were just kind of like, they chose to use, they can die. It's not our problem, but it really, you got to be able to bring them back. And if we bring them back, maybe they'll get help this time, so keep hoping with that. And then we got to stop the supply into the country. Cause if we don't do that, then they're just going to keep using. They're addicted. They can't stop unless you stop the supply into our communities. And that's by holding dealers accountable. I think you can do it. Now, after the formation of this group, and I know in Nebraska, our group wasn't the only thing that happened and was the cause of this, but there was a 40% reduction in fatalities in the first year.
Wow.
So I think there's a route to do that. You hold that dealer accountable. Dealers talk. Any narcotics officer knows that. They all know each other. They can talk. The word gets out. And we started arresting people, and they had heard of our group. They knew, man, I don't want 20 years. I'm not going to sell. I'm going to find it and use it, but I'm not going to sell to my buddy. I can't go away for 20.
Yeah.
That 20-year hit, man, that's huge. To take a dealer out of your community for 20 years, mandatory minimum.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. So, and on the feds, everybody cooperates somewhere along the lines. They're going to cooperate. Even the biggest, baddest dealers talk somewhere. So, you get a lot of information just trying to get any downward departure for 20 years.
Yeah.
So, a lot of intelligence.
What is one thing that you wish the public understood about the fentanyl and the dangers of the fentanyl in this crisis that we're facing?
I'd say that it affects everybody. I think there's a stat out there that 42% of people now know somebody that's died of an overdose. I'm one of them. It's affected my family, and there's victims all across the board, and it's cops, it's nurses, it's doctors. There's not just a demographic of that's just a drug user. These people are, they choose to use, but there's a reason for it. They got addicted to it. And this addiction is such a powerful thing. This is not like any addiction we've seen before. These people want to get clean. They want to get off of it. But then people that are addicted do so many crazy things to get that next time.
Yeah.
Steal, cheat, lie, whatever they need to do. And that affects families in so many different ways. It's a sad deal when I go and tell the family and, they just, I knew this day was coming.
Yeah.
And I had a dad tell me, at least I know where my son's at now. And that was after I told him he had passed away. because he had never knew where he was at. Like, and it was a good family, good kid. He got addicted, and that affected his family. So, like, I'd like people to know that. Like, there's a lot of families that are affected by this. Yeah. And, like, we've got to stop the flow into our communities, or it's just going to keep happening. Yeah. And we got to do something.
Is there any particular case, or I guess maybe a success story or something that stands out in your mind as being a particularly good case where everything just came together?
Yeah.
You want to talk about?
There's one that our group worked, and it's kind of been highlighted by DA, and it's still open. People are being indicted, but the DEA's at least talked about it on their website and stuff, so I feel safe talking about it. But it was, again, a group effort, and I wasn't even there the day that the person died, but our team responded, and it was a son and his dad passed away. They were using together, and witness had actually left the scene, but they respond, and one of our investigators grabs a tablet, from the scene, and actually found the messages there where the kid was communicating in order to purchase, some fentanyl, and they went and interviewed him. He confirmed, we had bought it from so-and-so. And that just rolled into, our investigators just working their tail off and going, hey, we're following this up. They go to the next guy, find him. He had actually been caught with fentanyl that day on a traffic stop. So he was in jail already. And it kind of was just this perfect scenario, just kept rolling into the next one. And, it was, hey, I got it from this person. And, well, that person's got a federal warrant, and actually is one of Nick's group's cases or a package. So they pointed us in the direction of where that person was, and we went and arrested him.
Yeah.
So we arrested him on the warrant, and then also, got him to admit, hey, I bought from this person, and I sold to this person. And so we were like, then I say the group was 3 rings deep by the first day.
Wow.
And it was just kind of like the perfect scenario. And actually, they've even gone higher than that now to where, they're, I think, at the 5th level and pretty much have an identity on the 6th one. Wow. And it's coming, it's back traced all the way to Mexico. That's awesome. So from one pill, one dead person in Omaha down to Mexico, and thousands of pills. And,
wow.
And it spread across the entire state of Nebraska. And we worked with the group out of Grand Island, the community there, bunch of great investigators there that we work with, and they worked their tails off, and it was such a big group effort that it all fell together as a perfect case.
That's awesome.
That's 1 out of 10 that we work.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. A lot of times we can get that first line dealer, and then other times it's like the ones you really want it, you just keep it dead end after dead end, and you beat your head against the wall because you're just trying to break through. But you try different things and you hope it works. So.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's a good, I guess a good outcome.
Yeah.
Have a bad situation. So what motivates you to keep going and keep working these cases, in light of all the challenges that you face?
I think the easiest thing to say there is to see some type of relief for families when you do hold somebody accountable for their loved one dying.
Yeah.
To see like they get some relief. It doesn't bring them back. And I always tell them that, like, hey, this isn't going to bring your loved one back. It's not going to bring your son back, but at least your son just didn't die, or your daughter just didn't die, and they forgot them. And that was it. That's how their life ended. That, it's a sad deal. You die in a bathroom at a gas station because that's where you're using, and they just like, what a horrible way to go. Just, so seeing that type of, hey, I got at least something. I get some type of piece that the person that gave this pill to my loved one is going to go and have to pay for, And so, that's probably what keeps me going every day. And, but at the same time, like, I have families reach out to me all the time, and, you just don't have the heart to be like, I can't advance your kid's case. Like, I don't have you got to have the evidence to get there. And sometimes it's just not. And you want to do everything you can for them, but you can't, just kind of dead in the water.
That's tough. So, if if there's officers out there that want to get information about your class and they want to try to attend one of your classes, where should they go to find that information?
Yeah, at ACE Interdiction.com. You can go to courses, and we've got all our courses right there. My course is failed dose. We've got classes all the way through October. I said September, but we're all the way through October, kind of all over the place. We come to Tennessee here back next in August, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're all across the Midwest, Southeast. You can register for classes right there, kind of see what we have. We still have a few openings. I kind of want to get another one scheduled in October and then November, December. So if you want to host a class, reach out to us. We're always looking for different hosts, or we can even look into next year as well.
Okay.
I know Nick's class, he's looking for a few hosts as well. So I can't talk enough. Seeing Bauer today, we got some top-notch instructors, and
definitely.
I kind of want to live up to that standard. So, you'll get your money's worth, so
that's good.
You go to one of my classes.
That's good. I'm going to put a link to their website in the description below. So if you guys want to check that out, y'all just click on that and give them some support. And like I said, I'm impressed by all the options that they're giving right now.
Yeah.
All the different catalog that they're offering for all the different types of investigations and all that good stuff. But anyhow, all right, man. Well, I think that's about all the time we got for today. So until next time, guys, we'll see y'all down the road on Texas Narcos. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Texas Narcos Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, share our podcast with your friends and family. You can find Texas Narcos Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Your continued support helps us to bring you stories like the one you just heard. Thank you, God bless, and we'll see you down the road on Texas Narcos.